about yourself. So introduce yourself for our viewers and tell us a little bit about your background, please.
Hi guys, well I'm SSI Brown of Aviemore Detachment Commander from Aviemore. I'm a veteran, ex-serving soldier and a cadet, and I live in Aviemore and have now recently started my own military project. And my career with the forces goes back, well, this year it's something like over 42 years in and out of uniform, so quite a bit.
Wow, that is a long time.
Extensive.
Tony, we've got a question. It's also a question that came from Odyssey Tate. He's asked, at the age of 12 and living in a care home at the time, how did you hear about the Army Cadet Force and what made you join? It
was a bit of a fluke, actually. And I haven't made this quite public that often, I actually joined the Air Cadets first.
Really?
I was outside a shop with a friend of mine in London, where we lived, near Croydon. And we saw some Air Cadets going along with uniform on, and I happened to ask one of them, well, what are you guys up to? And they said, oh, it's Air Cadets. So cool. And I had this ambition to fly a helicopter. So I said to one of them, basically, can you fly helicopters in that gig? Oh, well, come along and see. We lasted 2 hours. You couldn't fly a helicopter, and I couldn't stand the guy in charge. So I walked out. And I actually walked in and said to this bloke who's in charge, any helicopters to fly here? And he just gave me some waffle, and 2 hours we were out. But then it gave me a little bit of a taste of something. And back at school, and I was telling people at school, and someone said, well, why not try the Army Cadets in Croydon? That was it, straight there, a couple of days later. And it was a sense of relief as well to get away from a children's home. To join the Army Cadets was really nice because there was no one from the children's home or school that was at Army Cadets. So that's how it came about.
No,
I was an Air Cadet first for 2 hours. Oh. I never signed anything, so I'm not technically an Air Cadet, am I?
That's good. You know, you announced that on live video, so our viewers now know this flaw.
That's a good idea, really, but I did put it in the book. So.
So obviously, Tag and I know you really well, and we know that you were in cadets for around 4 years before you took the Queen's Shilling and signed up as a regular soldier, first starting as a junior leader in the Royal Corps of Transport. Tony, what interested you to join the Transport Corps?
Joining cadets, we were at 151, which was Royal Corps Transport. And funnily enough, when I grew up, I never actually knew anyone who had a car. Mm-hmm. And I suppose I had this desire to drive. It's not like today, everybody's got 2 cars. We had none. And so I just thought, oh, I don't know, that sounded, and because I'd been wearing the cap badge, and the infantry never really appealed to me that much, although one of my choices was the paras. So, and my first choice was engineers, but Royal Corps Transport. I think it was because I'd been in the cadets as RCT, and I just liked that whole gig as well. So that's where it really came from.
Cool. Tony, so you've mentioned there that you were in the Army and you served in lots of places. You've served in the UK, Northern Ireland, Asia, Germany, all across Europe. And you've also served as a tank transporter and an Arctic warrior. At one point, though, you were the Army's youngest specialist tank transporter at the age of just 17 and a half. Tell me more.
Yeah, that's quite unique.
That's quite young.
It was. And when you join junior leaders, you join at 16. Mm-hmm. And you're all basically do your basic training. And at the end of that, you get to select what branch of the RCT you want to do, which today is the logistics school, which has loads of different trades. And during my passing out parade, a tank transporter came into the camp to do part of a presentation, and I was instantly hooked on that. When I applied to do tank transport, and I was told that, no, you can't do it. It's all senior guys that are in the Army, because it was actually classed as an A trade, so you get paid more, but it's a specialist trade. Mm-hmm. But it had to be someone who served in the Army for at least 3 years, HGV1, and done their trades. So sort of wept out the back of my mind. But I thought I put it in just to see. And I think there was 365 of us that joined the day I joined. Out of that, 2 of us got tank transport.
Wow.
And I couldn't believe it that I was actually selected for it. Me and another guy, great guy, Molly, we were both told, yep, you're going in. They changed the policy on allowing tank juniors to come in because the numbers, the old sweats basically, were leaving the Army. Mm-hmm. And they realised we need to get the younger guys in, train them up, and let them become the future. They'd never had someone who was 17 come into tank transporting, but you're only officially a tank transporter once you've done your first aid trade.
Okay.
So I arrived in camp, and I think they just took one look at me and thought, it's a kindergarten. I mean, what time we put it into bed? And they took one look and thought, I mean, the wheel was almost as high as me. You know, I mean, and I looked at these things. How am I going to drive one of these things? I'd only had my license 3 months, and I'd gone from a pedestrian at the age of 16 to a HGV. Well, first of all, HGV 3, and then I did do 2 to 1 at the age of 17 and a half. I'd hardly done any driving. So I turned up in a specialist unit, big blokes. They were all big blokes because it's a heavy technical job. Mm-hmm. I think they took one look at me and thought, this is the broomsticks walked in, you know, I mean, what's happening here? But I played on my youth. But fortunately, I managed to laugh and smile with people, but I realised these older guys that are experienced at tank transporting. We are soldiers first, but are tank transporting after. Well, I could do both, and I wanted to be a tank transporter as well as a soldier. Ask the experienced guys, learn, have a laugh, but learn your job through them and show them respect, and they'll teach you the job. And I just flew. And I think I was only in Germany 3 months, not even 3 months, 2 months. I was on my HGV1, passed. And a month later, I was sent off to a specialist course, which is your A3. I'm still only 17 and a half. And passed. And I became, and it's a 4-week course. So, you know, I mean, a year earlier, I was not like long left school. I suddenly became an A3 tank transport. I was the youngest in the army and the youngest that they've had, which didn't, when I first arrived, I went to the wrong camp and I didn't get off the bus. So I couldn't speak German. I didn't know where I was. They said, you're going to BFBO 38. What's that? But okay, so the next day I got a because I went an hour to a different camp. And Sergeant Major called me in and he said, if you want to be the youngest tank transporter, you need to switch on. And not only did I go to the wrong camp the first day, the next morning when I first parade, I went to the wrong camp the second morning, although it was in a garrison. So I really didn't so you've got a 17-year-old who goes to the wrong camp twice in the first 2 days, and it's in a specialist unit. I wasn't starting off too well.
Going places.
Tony, those of us that know you know that that is a regular occurrence. You would still do that.
I think I would actually, yeah. And even when the Sergeant Major was, I'm thinking, this is quite nice actually, because he wasn't shouting. Whereas in juniors, I'd have been marching up and down the road and I'd be in and outside the guard room. So I'm thinking, yeah, I can take a bit of I just won't get lost again, you know. So it was a big camp, And
Tony, can you tell us what an Arctic Warrior is for those that don't know?
So Arctic Warrior is part of it no longer exists, the unit, but it was called Ace Mobile Force. And our job existed to anything that kicks off anywhere, especially in Europe. We were the quick reaction force that would get the kit there and get the personnel to it. Generally, it was Norway, Denmark, Italy, as far as Turkey. Mm-hmm. And it was a NATO force made up of Britain, Canada, America, Germany, France, Turkey was even in it as well. And I got posted to that after I left tank transporting. It was a bit of a actually asked to go there, but I've done quite well on a ski cross cut because we were all Nordic, and that's where the Arctic Warrior comes from. You do your training in Norway and you have to be able to do cross country, or you do it in the Highlands, or you do it in Brecon Beacons or wherever it might be. And it's part of, but basically AMF, Ace Mobile Force, was a NATO specialist quick reaction force. So we would train with the Marines, we train with the Paras, or any, the specialist infantry regiments. So we were land. So when we see it, for instance, I have it there, AMF land. That is, I think we had it something like 48 hours or maybe to get 72 hours to get kit there. Whereas air, they'll be there straight away. So it's basically a specialist quick reaction force.
Wow, that's really interesting, Tony. So this week, across the UK, we're celebrating Mental Health Awareness Week within the Army Cadet Force. Now, you obviously have an extensive military career. I'm sure you've had to deal with fear and anxiety in lots of combat situations. Do you have any tips or, takeout points for dealing with those anxieties?
I think I would say yes. I would have, obviously, as a youngster getting posted to conflict zones, or even if it wasn't even a conflict zone, it could be just a tense situation within the army, but especially conflict. My first time I went to Northern Ireland, I didn't go there with an impression of an inbuilt attitude of what the place was. I knew it was not. I knew it was going to be rough, but I took it as, I'm here to do a job. I'm in the middle of something. Don't dwell on it. Don't get too deep into it. I also was lucky enough, I didn't understand it. I didn't understand the political side of it. So when something did kick off, it was more a case of, that's probably the wrong way of putting it. I think it was more a case of not being too aware of the situation, but being able to be afraid.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you know you're afraid, you know you can, something's happening. If you go in there blasé and you don't care about nothing, you're going to be slack, you're going to be, and something's going to kick off and you're going to get hurt or you're going to let your comrades down. And it's also remembering you're in a team. It was so important when you're out in a conflict zone that you work as a team. Your job, do what you need to do, but make sure the rest of them around you are doing it with you and you're doing it for them. There's no individuals and that sort of thing. So for me personally, not being too aware helped.
Mm-hmm.
Being switched on, which sometimes wasn't always easy. Can't say I was always perfect when I did things out in different places, but it was having a sense of knowing your job.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the training, listen to what you're told and really put the training into practice. And as soon as you don't know something, ask somebody. Get a senior guy. It was so important to take some advice or something. If you're tasked to do something and I wasn't sure about it, I'd go and see someone and make sure I get it.
Tony, I think you said a really powerful message there. If you're feeling anxious about something, then it's okay to accept that you are feeling anxious about something. Mm-hmm. I think that's really important for people to realise that sometimes it's okay not to feel okay.
Yeah, I agree. I think as youngsters as well, we tend to, especially guys, we will hold it in. Mm-hmm. And we won't express our feelings. We could be on the street somewhere and we could be absolutely getting a really hard time. And inside, we're scared. But outwardly, we're not showing it. But when we go back to camp, we tend to put on a bit of a lad's gig. But actually, if we were able to let that out a little bit, talk to one of the lads or talk to one of your seniors, you actually find by relieving it, it's actually a little bit easier and you can then face it a bit easier, a bit more. So today I would definitely say to guys or girls, speak to someone. If you're bottled up with something, just let it out a little bit. Take someone to one side and just whatever, however small it is.
Yeah, and that goes for adults as well. Cadets and adults.
Yeah,
we have to deal with emotions too. So that's a really great message. Thanks for that, Tony.
Yeah, Tony, just to kind of touch just a wee bit back on your kind of your childhood. Now, doing a little bit of research in this, you've said that your childhood was a combination of things, right from a young age. Now, for those who don't know, you were placed into a care home in South London, and whenever you were 7 months old. What advice would you give to cadets who are going through a similar upbringing in care, Tony?
Oh, there's a lot of advice you could give actually, but I would tend to, for me, I wasn't totally aware that I was in care at first, because you're very young, you don't know nothing else. It can actually be harder for someone who's a 5-6-year-old who's taken out and then put into care than someone who, like me, went into 7 months. So until I actually was aware that I was in care, the advice I would say to people is a bit like the question just before. If you're finding this whole abandonment, because that's what it is, you feel abandoned. However, it could be polished up. You've done nothing wrong. That's one thing I would definitely say to kids that are in care. You've done nothing wrong. Your lifestyle is different, but that's all that's different. You're not different. You're exactly the same as any other child that's at school, that lives with their parents. It's just that you don't live with your parents, but you've done nothing wrong. If actually it's more maybe the parents have done something that have forced you into that situation. So first of all, I would say to all children, you've done nothing wrong. It's just that you're living in a different situation than kids that are living at home. For me, it was quite surreal because there was 400 of us living in an estate made up of 52 houses. So we were actually just us in this home in a very posh part of London. Today, when children are fostered, they tend to move into a house that may be in a street with all other regular families living around them. So the chances are they can intermingle with the regular society. Whereas for us, it was a lot different. If we went outside the home, we would go out in groups of 8 or 10 kids, and you stood out because of where we lived. So that is a little bit better for the kids today. But yeah, no, I would just say to children, you've done nothing wrong living in care. It's some kids, it's for your own safety. For other kids, it's a better option than living at home. But it's most important that I think kids realise they're not there because they've done anything wrong. Mm-hmm. Kids in care are just as important as kids that are not in care.
Yeah. And Tony, when you came out of care, where did you stay?
I went straight to the army. I walked out in the morning and had a bed that night. For me, it was a bit of a no-brainer. Mm-hmm. The home that I lived in it had all sorts of problems and options and non-options, whatever. Once I decided to join the army, I just focused on that. Fortunately, being in the cadets massively helped for me. Mm-hmm. One, because it taught me some things, and it gave me a road. Because for a lot of the kids in care, we never saw much of a road, because basically it was either care home out and into central London, into hostels and things. That wasn't happening. So the day I joined, and I was 15 when I joined, took the Queen's shilling. I spent that on a can of Tizer and a packet of poppy treats. I just signed up to this great big army, and I've got a can of Tizer and chipsticks, that was it, and a packet of chipsticks. I don't know if you're supposed to keep the shilling as a keepsake. I don't know if you get it today.
But I didn't. It.
Straight to the shop. Can of Tizer, chipsticks, and a packet of peanut treats. And I just joined the killing machine, I just the army. So once my date to arrive, which was the 9th of June, I literally got up in the morning. The life at the home hadn't been great for that towards the end. I hadn't even been speaking to the person in charge. My sister didn't even know I'd left. I had a half sister living in the home. I literally got up in the morning, got on a bus. I'd had a rail warrant. I had £2 in my pocket, and I was gone. And by, 3-4 o'clock in the afternoon, I was in the army. And so it was a bed. It was food. It was bed. It was friends, hopefully. And it was just an adventure. So literally there was no tears on the platform in fact, when I saw all these parents hugging their little boys goodbye and they're all crying, I thought, you soft kids, get on with it.
Tony, can you talk to us about the Ossian Hotel? Tell us a bit about that.
Well, the way that came about was that was through the home. And when I was 12, me and another lad who also joined the army, actually, Kevin, he joined the Grenadier Guards, but I don't hold that against him. One day, I don't know where it came about, we were asked, there is actually more to the story, but I'll just give you the easy story. We were asked, do we want to go to Scotland on a gliding holiday? Now, we're brought up as little kids in South London, and I didn't even know what Scotland was. And I didn't know what a glider was. So I've just said, yeah, I'll have some of that. I hadn't got a clue where I was going and a clue what I was going to be doing. Why we were going to do on a gliding course, we don't know. Anyway, the other lad, Kevin, he pulled out, and I wasn't going to go. But it was all arranged, whatever. And they worked out for the children's home to find, because it was up here in the Highlands, where was I going to stay? Because I was literally going on my own on this thing. People would be horrified today to send a 12-year-old kid. Mm-hmm. This family that owned this hotel, the Ossian, were the only hotel that were willing to look after me and pick me up at the station and actually basically chaperone me around for that week. So that was all arranged. It was all, but I didn't know anything about that. All I know, I was just, the day we were leaving, I was put on a bus, and I was taken to Euston Station in London, and I was literally just put on a train with a bag. That was it. Gone. You know, got a clue. I'm going to Scotland. What is Scotland? I'd heard of bagpipes and heard of nearly called them skirts. Heard.
You've just offended every Scottish
Yeah,
person.
you better edit that one. I'd heard of kilt.
Watching this, Tony.
And when I arrived at Abbeymoor, 10 hours late, because the train broke down. I remember it breaking down for ages. And they'd given word to this guard bloke, and he'd told someone else that this kid was getting off. Mm-hmm. And anyway, I got off at Abbeymoor, and the lady, Mrs. Ramage, who owned the Aussie, and she met me at the station. And it was one of the most amazing things. It was the first time I met a mother, because I'd never actually met my parents. And this lady just put me up. She just looked, I mean, I was a rake. We need to get some food down this poor boy. And so she just put her arm around me, because I was like skinny. But I just felt this sense of, it was just unbelievable. It was an unbelievable feeling. And coming to the hotel was an unbelievable feeling. But immediately I wasn't a guest. She took me under her arm as part of her family. And she kept me in the kitchen, mainly because probably she was trying to watch me in case she thought I was going to steal a case of the joint. I was casing the joint. We got this little Cockney rebel. He's come up, he's going to be emptying the... But it wasn't like that. And I just fell in love with the family. I really did. And when I went back a week later, I found that hard going back. I hounded the home to see if I could come again. And about 6 months later, I was allowed to come. And that was on a winter trip. And so for the next 4 years, whatever it was, every Christmas and summer, I'd get a week, and they'd let me come up here before I'd go on cadet annual camp. And it's just really developed from that. And in fact, cheekily, I used the address when I joined the army, because again, when I joined the army, I think I've told this story, I arrived at camp, and because I've left the children's home, because a lot of children that have been in care, we don't broadcast it. We don't tell people, I'm in care, I've got no parents. So we tend to feel there's a stigma. There isn't, but we feel it. So when I arrived at camp and doing the registration, this corporal's, where's your home address? And who's your parents? Who's your guardian? Well, I ain't got any of that. And I just said, well, look, I can stay here. You know, I'll do my leave here. And he sort of looked at me with this funny look, and as if to say, well, no, you can't. And before he could ask any more questions, I just said, look, we'll put down Ossian Hotel in Kincraig. Okay, fair enough. We'll be writing to them to let them know you've arrived. Well, they didn't even know I was arriving, so they were looking for a shock. So I had to phone them, and of course I didn't have a mobile, and I phoned them about 3-4 days later. And they told me that, yep, Tony, use our address and you can come and stay here. So I stole their postcode, and I'm still here.
And Tony, do you have a favourite memory from when you used to go and stay in the Ossian?
Yes. Apart from the people, Melba toast, which I'd never had that before, and the 2 dogs. We had these 2 giant border collies, and they used to swamp me. They were just huge. They were just the most friendliest dog. So, and then just here, the Highlands, it just felt so different. Although where I was in the home in London, it wasn't built up. We were actually almost countryside. But this was different, and it's stuck with me. So yeah, Melba toast, the border collies, and the Highlands.
So Tony, tell us how your relationship with the hotel has developed now.
So what happened was, obviously I carried on through the army, and I used to come home. I didn't come home that often, actually, because I'd come home on leave, because it was a thriving hotel. It had a really popular restaurant, one of the most popular restaurants in the Highlands. Famous, and the locals all used it. So if I did come home, I knew I was going to be straight in the kitchen washing up. And I generally had to do that when I was in the army, because I'd obviously be in trouble for something. So I'd find myself on cookhouse fatigues. So I wasn't going home to do it. So, but anyway, when I eventually left the army, moved back up to the Highlands, the family over the years, as things moved on, they got first 2 had died, and then the first 3 of them, because it was 4 of them. I ended up investing in the property because of to help take it over, to save it, basically. I mean, there's no point hiding about the bush, because it got financial difficulties. But then it was still a hotel when I sold my house and put that money into this, literally to save it, because if we didn't, it was going to go. But I knew I wasn't a hotelier. In fact, the very notion of being a hotelier, if you call me a hotelier, I'd sue you. it's 40 towers on steroids, it's just nonsense. And so I had to do something else, because it was, people walking around saying, "Good morning, how are you?" I'm like, mind your own business, really. So that's not going to work in a hotel. And so, but anyway, I took it over. So it was, what we're going to do with it. I'm not a hotelier. I don't want to do a hotel. I've saved it. We need to get, there was big debts and that, where we're going to go forward. And so what happened was, I looked at the idea of turning it into self-catering apartments. Didn't always sit great with me. So then we decided that didn't come off. So then I looked at selling it as houses, private houses. And then you've got quite a lot of rich people coming along to want to buy the houses. And it just made me think, this is more holiday homes in Ireland. And we've got enough of those. And funnily enough, it goes back to the RAF. A friend of mine who's in the RAF was here one day. He'd heard it might be up for sale. And he was sniffing around. And he said, "Have you thought about doing this? Because we're thinking about possibly the Ossian as a outdoor centre for the RAF to go in conjunction with the one in Grantown. And we need somewhere for staff." Well, that was it. I wasn't letting the RAF have it. No chance. Robbie, if you're watching. And it really, so back to the RAF. I started with the RAF and curtailed them and did it again. But it got me thinking, if the RAF could use it, why can't we turn it into something for the forces, but something positive and something that I could do? I've got this huge building. I don't need a huge building. I don't need much. Let's give it back to the forces. The army gave me a postcode. Let me give the army. And that's really how it is. I'm giving it back. And the family that owned it, funnily enough, the Ramages, Mr. and Mrs. Ramage, the two that I met first, they were both in the army. And John Ramage, he was a captain in the Gurkhas during the war. And his wife was in the forces as well. And they both served out in India. So it's got that nice circle. It's all full forces and comes right around.
So the Ossian is now Forces Manor. Can you explain what Forces Manor is and what the aim of Forces Manor is, Tony?
The aim of Forces Manor is, it's going to be a self-service accommodation for serving soldiers, Air Force, it's tri-services, Navy, Air Force and Army, cadets, and veterans and children in care. And you'll be able to just come along, and so you could use it as a hotel. So if you want to come along and spend the night, if you want to come and spend a week on a self-catering holiday, there's going to be 2 kitchens. There's going to be a group kitchen. There's a family kitchen. The idea of it is not a specialist centre. So it's not particularly for people who've got particular issues. If you have, you can come and stay, because the whole idea is, as we already know in the cadets, this works the same very much in the army. We work together. You're not individuals in cadets. You're not individuals in the army or the Air Force. So Forces Manor will be somewhere where you work together. So there is a dining space, but they're not individual tables. They're going to be large communal tables. You work together, sit together. One kitchen, you share the kitchen. There's going to be a veterans lounge, which is going to be built up with, with books. It's going to be a military library. And so veterans come along, have a cup of tea during the day, sit and read a book. Cadets passing through, come and have a cup of tea, read a military book, whatever. It's just it's just in and out. It's a circle. It's respite, and it's also a centre for units that want to come and do some outdoor activities. And the Army's already said that that's something they would already take up on, especially because in the village we've got Lock-Inch water sports. I've come to an arrangement with them that we can have kit down there that people can go straight on with canoes, mountain bikes and that sort of thing. So it's for individuals. Mum and dad wants to get away with the kids, come and stay. The cadet unit wants to have somewhere to stay for the weekend, go and do whatever. They might want to do some map reading around here, might want to do some fieldcraft. It's all on here. You can come and use this because there will be accommodation to house cadets as well as adults, but separate things. So it will grow into a bit more, but I think the most important point is it's self-service accommodation for forces.
Sounds amazing.
Well, Tony, I look forward to coming for a weekend away.
I do it all.
Tony, just to know, so basically, you were saying that you were the youngest specialist tank transporter. You've had a very successful career in the army. Now, I had to make a list of all the things that you've done since leaving the army, and you have achieved so many things.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, you were ranked the 10th British overall snowboard champion. You became an award-winning publisher, writing and self-publishing the world's first snowboard guide, which was Europe's first snow atlas in association with Collins, which was voted Book of the Week by The Observer. You then published a series of pocketbooks relating to Scotland's National Park, which received the royal backing from Her Majesty the Queen's Balmoral estate. Tony, how are you so good at everything?
It's called bluff.
That's amazing. It's absolutely amazing.
I just knock on the doors. I think that's something I learned in care. Don't allow there to be any barriers. Mm-hmm. Don't try and be something that you're not. Mm-hmm. But don't be told there's a barrier to doing something. I knew when I left school and care that I wasn't the world's greatest. I wasn't very well educated. I didn't do very well at school at all. In fact, I left a note. But I didn't think that could stop me. I didn't see, well, why could that stop me? So when it came to being writing the books, for instance, and in fact, that's one of them there. That's the World Snowboard Guide. I just thought, it's just pictures and words on a piece of paper. That can't be hard to do. Now, it wasn't very easy to read the way I'd written it, so I had to get people to edit it. But actually putting it together, and I wasn't put off by the fact that it was a book selling in big shops is something specialist people do. Why can't I do it? Same as when the Queen endorsed one of the books. I didn't actually speak to her personally, but her estate actually did, and I got a check from her. But again, I didn't go to a commercial company and say, look, could you help us market this? And can we get the backing of the Balmoral estate? Because what it was a wildlife book and a walking book, and it encompassed her estate. I just phoned them up. Literally picked up the phone and phoned Balmoral, explained what I was doing, and they said, well, if you're over, come and have a look at us, we'll give you permission to come in. And so I met the estate manager, and it just built from there. And so
where did you get the phone number for Balmoral estate from?
I've no idea. I didn't do directory inquiries for this.
Yellow pages.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe the visitor centre or something like that. But I wanted to speak to the estate manager, and so it was getting through to him, not the visitor centre. But again, it builds from that. It was the same with the Collins and the Land Rover. In fact, that was it there. That's Collins, because it was Collins. This was done on Collins and Land Rover, and they endorsed us as well. They gave me a car. They took it back, I might add. So I should say they lent me a car. I was quite upset at first. But when I went to see them, to get there and get it all signed up and everything, I'm turning up at their offices in Coventry. Now, this is one of the world's most prestige car, companies. I'm turning up in jeans and T-shirt and a rucksack with all these suits and people signing up for marketing stuff. And it was me, and I'm just thinking, well, this is how I do it. And someone said to me, Tony, when you're going in for this meeting, get the suit and tie on, put your hairs and graces on. Well, that's not me. I had to go in as me. And I came out within that year, there was 5 sponsorships. It was myself, English rugby team, the equestrian sports, and there's one other, I can't remember what it was. So it's just about not allowing a barrier to be there and going round. A bit of cheek, yeah, you have to throw in a bit of waffle, and it's not laying, it's just being a little bit
polishing,
yeah. But be brutally honest in what you're trying to do and how you're doing it. I think that was important as well. And then getting people to do the things that you couldn't do. For instance, no way would I have got a book published if I hadn't got someone to do the editing, because nobody would have been able to read it with my spelling. People say, Tony, why don't you use a spell checker? It doesn't help if you're dyslexic, because it gives you options. If you're given options, it's eeny, meeny, miny, mo, that I do. And it's probably still the wrong word. So I had to have people help me do the spell checking. And then again, you just get on with it. And so, yeah, it got the books got pumped around. They came on the back of the snowboarding actually. And the snowboarding came about was having done I'd done cross-country skiing in the army, which got me into AMF. And I got a bronze certificate for that. And that, again, it wasn't that I was trying to be a skier or anything, because I wasn't. It was the Langlar thing, you do the...
Yeah.
And that's what we did in AMF. So you was actually patrolling through snow-covered fields and things like that. And so when I came back to Aviemore, this was all skiing here. And it just didn't bite with me at all, really. I think it was the pretense of it all. And I'd been out in Austria. I'd seen snowboarders in its early days. That's for me. And so I picked up the snowboarding, brought it back, and I set up Britain's first snowboard shop, which is now, if anybody goes into Ellis Brigham's in Aviemore or anywhere in the country, they've got a shop called the Snowboard Asylum, which is TSA. Well, that's the Snowboard Academy. And that came from what I'd set up in Aviemore.
So do we get a discount if we mention your name?
I doubt it, because those that run it now wouldn't probably even remember. But,
it was worth a try.
It was worth a try, yeah. So I know the original, well, you can go in and say, I know the original TSA, which was the Snowboard Academy. The guy who runs it throughout Britain, Bob Brigham's manager for it, he took it over. He took it on from what I'd set up. And again, I didn't know how to sell, because what happened was I was a snowboarder and I competed and I could run around and look like a stupid snowboarder. But when it came to being a shop person to sell and markups and margins and profits, I couldn't spell them, so I couldn't actually do them. So it was out of my league. So I moved on, and that led me to thinking, well, what am I going to do in the snowboard industry? I've set up the first shop, that's moved on. I can't make snowboards, that's too technical. Someone's going to come up with a guide, ski guide. We'll have a snowboard guide, because snowboarders won't buy a ski guide. Mm-hmm. Skiers will buy a snowboard guide, but they wouldn't buy the other way around. And so when I wrote the first book, it was written with a different, and I actually went out and spent 2 months out in Europe, living in a Ford Fiesta, reviewing all the results. And I got arrested, had a gun put to me head.
Tony, you're some man.
I was laying in a car park one night, and I'd parked my car up in an overnight car park, but I didn't know they have shutters. Mm-hmm. So I'd parked, and normally I'm sleeping in the car. So I'd gone to somewhere to get something to eat and a couple of beers, and came back, and there was a shutter down on the car park, which I was quite nuts, because my B&B's behind this shutter, and I needed to get to my bed, which was this. And anyway, I tried to get under this shutter thing. It was quite loose, and so someone had got annoyed and called the police. And while I'd given up, then I'd gone and sat down on a bit of ground near it. Next minute, I'm waking up, and there's Spanish police, Italian police. Sorry, it's in Italy. And I've got guns at my head. And I haven't a clue what they're saying, because I don't speak Italian. But I knew it was trying to wake up. I go along with what they've said. And literally, it took a while. When one of them spoke, and he said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm researching for a book." "Oh, you press?" "Yeah, I'm press. "Oh, it's okay. We let you." Then they let me back into the car park. I couldn't find the car.
So there was a happy ending.
Yeah, there was, when I eventually found the car. It's a true story, yeah.
Oh, so Tony, you obviously left the army in 2016, but you didn't cut your ties with the armed forces, because you then became the treasurer of one of the UK's largest army groups for veterans and serving soldiers. At the same time, you also became the publishing editor for the much-loved Army magazine. Can you tell us a bit more about your role and where you get your passion for publishing?
Yeah, obviously the publishing passion for it came from the snowball guides, because it gave me a bite then, and I realized I could do this, and I won a couple of awards with it. And becoming a treasurer, that was completely out of left field for me, and that actually was a fluke. It wasn't a fluke, because I didn't want to do it. So I didn't know what a treasurer was. When I got put up, and our group is 2,000 of us, I think, my friend who's the chairman of the group said, "Right, listen, you don't have to do anything. We just need a treasurer. I need to get names to whatever." And the president of our group is a guy called Major General Stern. So everything we do is done very proper. I'm thinking, no, Tony can't be a treasurer. It's got to be proper. So when they voted us in, they asked the group, right, Tony's up for treasurer, all those that, someone nominate, so someone put my name up. So the room, and in the room for the meeting, the AGM, there was probably about 60 guys. All those that seconded it, and they all put their hands up. Anyone against it? I put my hand up. So I sat here like this. I was just like, guys, you can't have me as your treasure. I don't even spell the bloody treasure, and I don't know what to do with it. But anyway, I got that. Put your hand down, you're doing it. And that's how it came about. And so, but really my role is, it is that book. It's called The Drag Mag, and it's got nothing to do with your preference of what you want to wear. It's drag is, we dragged tanks around, and we dragged them out of ditches, and we dragged them on trailers as well. So it was that I could actually publish that, and we do coins, and then we have a little shop, and we sell memorabilia, and we do stuff for veterans that pass away. Mm-hmm. So we'll do memorial stuff and to things like that. So, and it's just a real buzz, yeah. I had a break from it a little while before I actually took up the role, and going back to it. And I think anybody who's watching this who's ex-services, most of us always retain our ties somewhere. There's something that it's quite unique. The forces are quite unique. The same with the cadets. It's quite unique that once you've been in it, you're never out of it. And I think that's what made me. And then, of course, that led on to be coming back to the cadets.
Look at you swinging on your swivel chair. James Bond.
Another cast off. I nicked it. I did actually nick a desk once at school.
Oh, Tony. You're saying that to a teacher. Come on.
Yeah, but you can't nick your desk. They're big things. I don't know why I nicked it. I got it home on a bike.
Now you have to tell us this story.
Oh, it took hours. School had closed, and I just wanted, these little the old wooden things with the lifter?
Yeah.
I thought, I want one for my room. And and school was closed, and I used to go woodwork club. So I just went in the class and nicked it. Of course, the day I nicked it, should I? No, actually, for the cadets, I borrowed it.
Gave it back.
Yeah. Of course, like an idiot though, I'd got a bike, and I decided the quickest way to get home was not through the gates and going round the road, because I need to get away quick so no one sees me. I went across the sports field, but it was wet. So I've got a desk that I'm trying to balance on a bike, using it as a trolley. The ground is wet. The bike's not going nowhere. I'm falling over with it every 5 seconds. So what should have taken maybe 5 minutes, took about half an hour. I was soaked, I was wet, and someone must have, the caretaker, just thought it was so funny watching this idiot trying to steal something.
Oh, Tony, what are you like?
I mentioned that story in my book, actually.
You're cheeky.
So, Tony, just to kind of talk a wee bit more about your passion for publishing. Now, we were obviously doing a little bit of research for this as well. Now, you are in the middle of releasing a timelined book. So it's kind of like follows music and pictures and stuff. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, it's called Brown Eyes. It is my journey from care through cadets into the army, and some of the things I got up to in the army, and just the journey seen from a simple background. So it's not a war story. It's not a technical aid or anything like that. And the idea is I wasn't going to write about being in care in it, actually. It was a friend of mine who said people will want to know, because it was going to start with cadets. People will want to know, what was your passion for the forces? Why was the army so important to you? And the army wasn't important to me for any great reason of nationalism or protection or anything like that. It was, like I said before, it was a bed and some food. But as I got into the book, I started writing. I thought, right, okay, we'll show how it was going from care through the book. But what I didn't want to do was, often if you write a story and it's in a slightly different era, and you date it, people might not be able to relate to it so easy, or they might think, oh, it's at such and such a date. That's not going to relate to my period. I'm not going to be able to home in on anything. So I decided not to put dates, because that can actually steer you away from what you're trying to say. But use music, because music has really, really guided me through everything. Through my days in care, and I learned a lot of music up here, I found shutting myself away and listening to music and learning to play the guitar was a great way. Learning to play the guitar badly, I might add.
Who doesn't?
Not doing Top of the Pops, or whatever it is. using music really takes you back to a period. It really does relate to something. You can almost touch and smell things. So as you read through the book, I tie a song into that that event. For instance, when I joined the army, the day I joined, one of the songs in the charts was Sex Pistols, God Save the Queen. Well, I was joining God Save the Queen, God Save me and all, you know. If she knew I was joining, she'd be wanting her shilling back. So it works perfect. And there was another song, You're Moving Out Today. But it just gives a bit of humour and then links it together. And so what will happen is on each page, because the book isn't just text, there's thousands of pictures in it, which a lot of them are my own, but a lot of them are pictures that the people in the forces that have been sending me that add to the time. And it's not just pictures of people. It could be pictures of the food, it could be pictures of vehicles, it could be pictures of whatever. It could be even pictures of the army toilet paper. And if anybody knows what the original army toilet paper with government property stamped on it, it will make you shudder when they see it, you know, because it was not nice. It wasn't. They would sell it in B&Q now in the sandpaper stand. And the government loved it so much they put on both sheets government property. Every sheet. They were pretty pleased with their toilet paper. So it's stuff like that. It shows all that. And then, so where the song is, there's a little Q code on the page. And you put your phone over it and the song will come up. So you can hear the song as you go through the book. And then there's some video clip as well. I think to try to explain to anybody what it's like to go into a gas chamber is really hard. But if you can show a video of that, so I couldn't find a way of writing about the experience of going into a gas chamber. So you put your phone over and you'll get a video of it and you can see it. So it's trying to make it a little bit more, and I think it's the first time a military themed book has been done in this way. And then at the end of it, there's a song that I've written that will be help produced from a friend of mine who was in care with me, who runs an association that's to do with all the kids in care, and my nephew, which a few of the cadets who know me around here, I think I've told you about it.
Yeah, we've seen the videos.
Yeah, Luke, he's well into the music industry, so they're going to help put this song together. And it's like a family thing, so my daughter's going to have an involvement in it.
Oh, that's amazing, Tony.
So, and then the book is to raise money for vulnerable soldiers and vulnerable kids in care. So that's what makes it such a buzz, because you're not doing it it's not a financial thing. Yeah. It's just a real positive thing. And I'll tell you, there's times I'm recounting some of the stories and I'm just crying with laughter. You know, there was once I was sitting right and Cara said to me, "Dad, what's wrong with you?" I couldn't talk to her. I was laughing so much. And I'm honestly, there's going to be a lot of people read this book and think, did we pay him? Someone better have a word with the Queen, because the calibre of soldiers, this wasn't what we were supposed to be paying.
We look forward to reading that book.
No, I'm not sure if I will.
It'll be like a book / ebook / audiobook
/ music video.
Yeah, there's already been, without going into it too much, there's already been a hint of it becoming something more than just a book. But wow. We'll see what happens on that. I'm just enjoying doing it. It's a big book. It's about whatever that is in 50 mil or something. 500 pages anyway. And it's called Brown Eyes. And you can wait to read the story, or I'll tell you the reason why it's called Brown Eyes. I've got brown eyes. But again, it was cheek. And when you join junior leaders, you got your ID card. I haven't got one here, but you know our ID cards we've got, and it's got your rank and your name. Well, mine had name brown, hair brown, eyes brown, complexion brown. So I said to my troop commander, I said to a couple of lads, listen, I'm going to go in that, because everyone was taking the mick out of me before it. So, and I didn't mind. I thought it was a laugh, apart from the fact my hair was black. So so I'm going to have a bit of a laugh with the troop commander. It was this guy called Lieutenant Cole. So I went into his office, and Sergeant Mercer was sat next to him. He was a little bloke. And he says, "What can I do for you, Brown?" I says, "Sir, any chance I can get my ID card changed?" No, you don't ask for ID cards to be changed, but I did. being naive. I was only 16. Why? What's wrong with it? Well, it's a bit brown, sir. Go on. And I could see this troop sergeant sitting there. I could feel the steam coming out of his ears. He was absolutely raging. And I was biting my lip. He says, what do you mean? Go on, what do you mean? I says, well, hair, short, looking good, complexion, exotic. Get out of my office. Don't. And I could hear him shout. He shouted, you come back in my office and do that again, I'll kick you into more colours than you could spell. And get out. Oh, by the way, you're on cookhouse duties later on. And so that's how I just thought that's the title of the book. And there was a song out at the time, which works really well. Don't you make my brown eyes blue?
Oh yeah.
You remember that song? I don't know.
I've heard that.
So yeah, so my eyes were blue when from that, but it just made a fun story, and it was true. I never did get it changed. Not until I got my MOD 90.
So, Tony, let's talk a bit about our much-loved pastime. In 2017, you joined us as a CFAV in the 1st Battalion Highlanders. You put that uniform back on. You're now based at Aviemore Detachment as a detachment commander. Why and what appealed to you to join as an adult volunteer? And why should we encourage both children and adults to join this organisation?
To join, I can't remember what it was. I think I met someone who said to me, because at the time I just started thinking about writing the book, and well, why don't you just become a cadet again, and you'll be able to see it from that side, which wasn't the main reason, but it did slightly appeal to me. It was, I wanted to give something back. Someone had given me that chance as a 12-year-old to do things. Took out their time, put their time aside. I could do that. I thought, yeah. And I'm telling you, I've done lots of things that have been where I've been nervous and scared about doing. Joining the cadets as an instructor was one of the most nerve-wracking things I'd ever thought about doing. And I was interviewed by the commandant at the time, Colonel Cassidy. He came here actually, and even then I still wasn't sure that I could do this, because one thing I knew primarily our job was going to be, or my role as you know, is we're mentoring youngsters, but we're teaching them. No one could teach me, so how the hell was I going to teach someone else? I wasn't the best in the classroom, and I thought that's going to be interesting, but let's see it from the other side. Anyway, Lieutenant.
And then you met us too, and you were.
Well, that was it. And Richard, and he was in charge of Aviemore, and I waited a while before I turned up there. And the night I actually turned up, I really, honestly, there's no exaggeration. It was one of the most nerve-wracking things. I was so because I was going to have to go out in front, and all my life in the army, whatever I've done, even in snowboarding, you won't see many pictures of me when I was 10th overall. It's only a couple of pictures. I didn't go in front of the camera. I'm not that, this has all been new to me. So turning up meant I've got to stand in front of people and talk to them. And when you go on the FAMAS, I thought, I'm not going to be able to do this. I was so nerved up. But once I got into it, then, yeah, the buzz of being able to give your time back, not as an ex-soldier, saying I'm an ex-soldier, just that fact of if you can see that path for some of them that you've got out of it, then I can't see if anything more better. It's just a buzz. It's a huge buzz as well. And I've enjoyed every minute of it. Yeah. And with all the staff and everybody, it's just been fantastic. The cadets, it is weird being a cadet. I can sit when I'm in that classroom or where it might be, and I'm trying to talk to them, and there's one of them who is not paying attention and is being a little bit, as you know, what they shouldn't be. I'm thinking, it's me. Yeah. So how can I tell him off? Because I can't tell myself off. How can I get him to do something? Because you couldn't have got me to do it. And that's a challenge. It's a real challenge. But then again, I think if I'm able to sit in their feet and their shoes.
Yeah.
I noticed the little things when you're coming back from camp and you're weak, or the cadets that hang around longest tend to be the ones who may be a little bit nervous about going back home or whatever. Just there's little things that I can spot a little bit earlier that I would have done. Again, I'd come back from the camp and everyone else is picked up to go home, and I'm walking up the street to get the bus.
Mm-hmm.
So you can relate to little things like that, and you can spot things, but you can't get a better buzz than this. It's just such a...
It's very rewarding, isn't it?
Yeah, big time. And, when the cadets achieve the things that you want them to achieve. We had 2 that we got promoted during this lockdown. That was such a buzz to be able to promote them during something like this when they may be all switching off, thinking that they can't achieve anything. There's another one I'm helping out just to build his personality up and do a bit of running and things, and just keep a little bit of egging on for them. And that's the little pamphlets that I do, being able to give what I know how to do. I'm surprised not many. Well, they do actually. They do pick up my spelling. And they look at me and they go, "Colour, have you seen this?" So you're like, "Oh, well, never mind."
That's what I love about them. They're so honest, aren't they?
Yeah. I said, "Did you understand it?" "Yes." "Oh, well, that's good enough for me then." And I don't mind them picking you up. I don't mind.
Nice to be kept on your toes.
Yeah, I think so. I don't think you should. I don't ever believe in trying to be something you're not. There's certain parts of the cadet things that we all are as instructors that we might not be strong on as other things, subjects we do. As Debbie would tell you, my love of first aid wasn't a great love, but she's coaxed me into doing it, being more into it than I should be. So, and she was great to work with as well. So we're lucky in Aviemore because we've got a fantastic building.
Yeah.
There's quite a mixed group of kids that live here as well. So it's quite a nice area. So, I think it's like anything, you make do with what you got, but if you've got something like a brand new cadet hall like we have, you can actually it's much more easier to attract the cadets in and keep them there than, sadly, some of the cadets who are in the halls all over Britain that maybe not quite up to it, so not always as easy to keep them infused and stuff. And then it's just coming up with ideas with them.
Yeah. No, Tony, that's great. Thank you so much for answering those questions.